Today's episode is the one that I had most pleasure recording so far. Today's guest is Omar, and somehow me and him have a similar journey so far. Both grew up in Africa, software developers at heart, found ourselves years afterwards in Germany, and working in VCs. Today, Omar will share insights on how you become a better founder, how to approach investors and VCs, how and when to raise capital, and hopefully achieve success, aka exit. This is one of the episodes I would recommend for every aspiring entrepreneur, so please give it a shot. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of your favorite show, Spark. And hi Omar, lovely to have you here today. I was really looking forward to our episodes since a while now, since I just texted you over LinkedIn. I think this episode is so special for me because it looks like I'm talking to myself. We have quite similar background and we will delve deep in that. Moved to Germany from an international background, from Africa kind of, and we've been struggling and developing our lives in this country and like building our second home, and both interested in entrepreneurship, VC and startup. And as you know, we've been talking before starting and for a while now, and it's really an honor to have you here. But to start, so for everyone who's listening today, what's the best way you could describe yourself with, and why everyone who's clicked on this should continue listening?
Beautiful question. I think there are two ways a person can describe themselves. One is through stories, the other through their personality types. Through a story, I think there are two main stories in my life. I was a competitive programmer. I was doing this semi-religiously growing up. And the second story is how I managed to get myself expelled from 2 schools and 1 university before I moved to Germany. And that tells you a little bit about me. Personality-wise, I really like Carl Jung's archetypes of personalities, and I always found myself between the rebel and the explorer. Rebel because, I just told you I got expelled 3 times for organizing strikes. And explorer because every time I feel life is going well, but I'm being complacent, for some reason I have this like unbearable anxiety that pushes me to change things or do something different. So that's about me as a person. I think professionally, the main highlights would be, by day, I work as a VC. I talk to founders who inspire me. And by night, I'm bootstrapping my own company, DealDoc. And in the little free time I have left, I organize events to meet great people. So that's about me. Why should people listen to this? I think I will have to go back around 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I was personally suffering from really bad anxiety. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I felt I was following the normal path. I was a good engineer. I was going to graduate. And I didn't know anything about VCs. I didn't know anything about raising money. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. It was not even something I heard about before. And just like everyone else, and all it took was me to take a decision, to step back, figure things out. And in this episode, I would like to share with people everything I have learned and hopefully save them the pain I went through over the past 3 years.
Great. You moved to Germany from Egypt, right?
Yeah.
How was it? Why even? Why did you choose even Germany? You could have stayed in Egypt.
Yeah, right. I didn't choose, I didn't really choose Germany. I found myself in Germany somehow. So what happened was I had started studying back home in Egypt in university. And then by my 3rd semester, we had a situation at the university. I did not like it. So I helped some friends organize a strike in the campus, which led me to be expelled, losing my scholarship. And then it was, luckily for me, one coincidence after the other, where I found myself in Germany. In the beginning, I thought I would stay here for 6 months and then figure out my next move. Then I was very grateful for my supervisor back then. I was doing some research at Uni Stuttgart, who told me, Omar, you're not that stupid. You can learn German. Why don't you give it a shot? And that changed my life. I learned the language, discovered that education here is free, and I stayed.
But why didn't you stay in Egypt? You could have stayed. You got expelled, but you could have switched to another university there. Or
True. I think what happened was the following. You have also been through the Arab Spring,
Yeah.
like in 2011, right? And we had a lot of hopes back in 2011.
We started it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. You didn't show us the end of the way, but yeah,
We started it.
we started it. So I had a lot of hopes for the future. I thought the future was bright. And then, as you know, it came crashing down on us. And I think back then, till this moment happened, I thought I can have my own small bubble where I'm safe from Egypt and just I have my own life. And this was like the wake-up call where I was discovered, yeah, Egypt will always come into my bubble. And I felt, yeah, I need to go somewhere else.
But how does it now feel to be in Munich? Do you feel at home?
That's beautiful.
Question every international has in mind.
Yeah, it's very difficult because, like, it's very funny. Like, I was just in Egypt, like, recently. And officially on paper, I only have my German citizenship, right? So I go there as an international somehow when I visit Egypt. But somehow, I don't know, like in a way, it does feel home. All of my 20s have been here. All of my friends are here. My loved ones are here. I still have family, obviously, in Egypt, but like all of the people I grew up with in the past 10 years have been here. But at the same time, you cannot really call it home because you never know if you can stay long term, no? And yeah, it's a difficult question.
And here is the hardest question.
Yeah.
Does Egypt feel like home?
Also hard
No.
because you go back and then you're like, who are my friends now? Like everyone moved on, people had families. You still see maybe your childhood friends, but do you really remember you, or do they remember an old version of you that doesn't exist anymore? So I think now home is where your friends are, where you feel comfortable, and it's not really a place, it's more of a concept. I feel it's a feeling. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I know the feeling of being part of two worlds where you belong, but at the same time you don't belong.
Yeah.
Like you're just in between. Yeah, like as an international, I know the feeling, and it's always kind of that guilt also on your head. Why did I left?
Yeah.
I could have stayed, had this comfort zone,
Yeah.
and like made everything easy, but still I chose the hardest part. And you always have this question: would it be worth it?
Yeah, this question used to kill me for such a long time because I remember there was a phase. So when I moved, I had to learn German. I wasted a few years and I graduated later, right? And I saw my friends in Egypt, they graduated earlier. They had nice jobs. Some of them even moved to Germany, like, you know, like jump starting me because they already started their career. And I always thought, was it really smart move what I have done? But when I look back, I think you sort of, like the actions you take in life, it is as if you are buying a realization about yourself. And for me, this action was me sacrificing something to buy the realization that I would stand up for my principles, I would do what I think is right, I would go the way that I think is the right way, whatever that means. And I came to peace with that. And I think moving away earlier, you also learn a lot of things and you shape your brain in a different way than if you had just waited till you are like maybe 25 or something and then move away for the first time. So I think I've made my peace with that.
I still struggle with it, honestly. Like, I moved to Germany at 17, 18 years old. And I just graduated last semester with 2 gap years and like with 1 year learning the language. So 3 years that other people already took for granted at Tunisia. And now most of my friends are coming here to work and they have easier study path. And at the same time, they're making more money than I do. But at the same time, I'm at my peace with myself in the way that I have more experience and knowledge in this ecosystem than all of you. And I kind of have integrated myself in a better way in the German ecosystem and the German communities that you will find it harder to kind of commute to it.
100%.
But for every international hearing this, it's always the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Just stick around and figure your way around it. It will take a bit of time, but there
100%.
is always a way. You just need to make your own happiness. But I also always think about going back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think of it like that at some point you will go home? And by home, I mean Egypt.
I know. So I think also a lot about it. And 2 years ago, I started doing a tour in the ecosystem in the MENA region in general. I feel Egypt is hard, like I wouldn't move back to Egypt. But I'm very curious about opportunities in the Arab world in general. So maybe, I think there are few spots where things are booming. So maybe that would be something I do.
What are the spots? Also?
Like now you have UAE, the ecosystem there, Saudi Arabia. They're really spending a lot of money. You see a lot of people, like, for example, many people from the C-level of DeepMind, like Mahdi Ghassasi, for example, the CPO of DeepMind, is now in UAE doing the AI 71 program, or like the platform. So I think there's a lot of talent moving there. When I was in Jordan, I also met a few people who are building these initiatives to encourage people from the diaspora to move back home and build something. So you never know. For now, I feel very comfortable in Munich. I love the ecosystem here, but it's always something in the back of my mind if I should move home or do something to support the ecosystem home. But home wouldn't be Egypt, most probably.
Okay. And you said that you faced yourself strong anxiety and depression, and it took you a while to kind of refocus and get yourself out of the darkness.
Yeah.
How was it? Why did you go through it? And what's the story behind it?
So I couldn't really tell. I remember it was early 2020, if I remember correctly, just before COVID. And I started having this feeling of, I don't know, I wake up, I don't want to study, I don't want to do anything, I just want to sit and do nothing. And I hated it because I felt very uncomfortable. And I couldn't explain it back then, but my best move was I took an Urlaub semester and decided, I was like, okay, I have this feeling, I have no idea where my life is going. Let me learn from people who seem fulfilled. So my superpower is reading books and summarizing them. So I just started buying books. And I remember bought books about many of the quote-unquote successful entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, etc. Other books just trying to figure out why do these people seem fulfilled, successful, etc. And I think this was, and it sounds weird for a VC saying that now, but this was the first time it hit me that people can build companies, that Daimler was just a guy, Siemens nearby was also just a guy, and you can just start stuff, right? Which is a very bizarre thought for me somehow. It was not something I grew up with, but it seemed that these people were able to feel fulfilled because they are working on something they enjoy. So that was like the first spark for me, that there is a way out of there. Because growing up, as I mentioned, I was doing this competitive programming from very early stage. People tell you you're going to be a great engineer. You'll work at Google, look at like, the toys there and like, all of the massages you can get. Life is amazing. What do you want more? And I thought I was walking towards this path. And this was a wake-up call for me that there is another path. So that's how it started. And I went through it because I had to go through it. I really couldn't function other way around. And it's a very interesting realization for me to figure out that there is a different path that I could pursue.
And what was the final decision afterward?
So the final decision for me was I will not be an engineer. I do not want to spend the rest of my life coding for someone else. This was something that I felt was really demotivating. During this phase, I joined actually a few programs from TUM, which I'm very grateful for, who introduced me to the whole idea of startups. One of them was very powerful because you could join as a talent, and there's a startups, and if there is a match, they treat you as if you were a co-founder for 3 months. Explore, exactly. And this was when I realized I can also do other stuff than code. I can talk to people, I can talk to customers, I can think about strategy, and there is much more stuff that I do enjoy. So the first decision was, okay, I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm not going to work as an engineer. Then I remember, and I remember it very vividly. It was actually Ramadan. We had a session with a VC who was telling us about VC do's and don'ts, how to raise money. I couldn't believe that's a real job. I remember asking in the Zoom chat, hey, is that like a job or something? I thought you have to be a billionaire and invest your own money. And I remember the person replying, yes, it is, just like, And I started like applying everywhere from like, from iftar till suhoor the next day, just applying to every freaking VC job I could find. And then I got my first internship. I couldn't believe it's a real job. I was like, there's no way. Right? Even today when I tell my parents, they're like, why is anyone paying you for this? So I did my internship. Then I started a blog where I talked about like VC for, I called it baby VC. I didn't know it was a thing back then. Just like, I felt like a baby discovering a new world and explaining it to others. I talked about technologies I like, how VC works. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it existed. And then, like through that, I got my first job at 10x Founders, and I never looked back. And I think I became much happier. If I think about it, I'm coding and I'm doing engineering more than I did before, but I'm happy about it somehow. So
how do you do a lot of coding and programming in a VC?
Not in a VC, like in my own company now. Like the tools, like I started doing VC by day, and always on the weekends I was having my own side projects, and now it turned out into a company. But I was being like, the idea is you're being bombarded by the best people and the things they're working on, and it inspires you to build something on your own. And I, like for example, the tool I'm building right now, I'm using tools from many startups that I have met through my career as a VC. So I felt, finally I found my ikigai.
But would you say, is it easy for internationals and Arab to jump in such a field? VCs getting into VC is not easy. I myself is working in VC, but I got it through luck, honestly, because I passed perfectly in there. It was the missing piece for them, and I just got in because I speak French, English, and German, and they needed someone who just does that, and they kind of invested in me so I can learn everything. I have no background, and I kind of know how hard it is to get in, because I have friends who struggled for months to get into an internship, and they moved from city to the other so they can secure one. And they are German.
Yeah.
And honestly, VCs it's really hard, and you need to kind of know the details, and you need to go deep in kind of the startups and do the workshops and deal flows.
Yeah.
Would you say there is a difference between a German and international, especially Arabs, to get a job in a VC?
Yeah, again, great question. Really like it. I think unfortunately it's hard, and I'm also similar to you. I'm very aware of the luck that was involved here to get me here. I think there are a few challenges you will have to overcome, maybe as an Arab person, that someone else would not have. One, I would say, is the culture you grew up in. I mean, you grow up, either you become a doctor, an engineer, or, a disgrace for your family.
You go to the army.
Exactly. Or that. That's also an option. That's also an option in Egypt now, unfortunately. But yeah. So it really took me a lot of effort just to accept. I mean, even till today, when I go back home, she's like, "So you're not an engineer?" Like it's such a weird thing to say. So that's like the layer number one. Layer number two, exactly as you said, like it's not something we grew up with. It's not something that we know. It's fortunately or unfortunately, I do not know. It's an industry that works on network. And if you're international, you do not have family here, you do not have people here. How would you get started? How would you build a deal flow? How would you be useful? And that's definitely challenging. Also, on top of that, if you think about it, most of us come here to study maybe engineering or informatics or whatever. So we're not even connected to the people who work in these industries. So it's challenging. Towards that, what I mentioned earlier, like we're building this community for the Arabic diaspora in VC, hopefully make it easier and easier for people just like to get into the ecosystem, push them there. If you think about it, like there are 3 companies now in Europe, all raised from Sequoia US, led by Arab founders. And if you look at like the people joining there, I think this will create more and more generations of people who know how VC works, and hopefully we can utilize this. So for now, I think unfortunately it's hard. Hopefully with time it will become easier. And if you think about it as someone who left everything behind and moved to start a life from scratch, you do have an unfair advantage, right? Like if you could do it once, you could do it again. So there's also an upside for it, I would say.
Nice point. But going back to be a successful investor in a VC, what makes a successful one? What are the skills? What are the unfair advantages that you could have?
Yeah.
To know which startup to invest in, when, and all, like to build the deal flow and to develop the whole network around it.
I like to think of it as a game. So let me start on different levels and we can take it from there. One, I mean, the short answer is no one knows, right? I mean, even if you talk to the best investors, it's very hard for them to distill their gut feeling. It's eventually a gut feeling business, but you can start training yourself. At least that's what I try to do. So for example, for me, when I first got into VC, I try to identify who seem to be great investors and either read everything they have written, or if I have access, and now maybe I have more access, I just try to talk to them. How I frame it, I feel every VC has some sort of a dogma or a religion that they follow blindly about how they make investments. And I'm just curious. I do not judge. I talk to people, okay, tell me more about your religion. Why do you invest the way you invest? And try to help them, scratch their subconscious to get something out of it. And my approach right now is I talk to people, I learn from them, I learn the different styles. And hopefully with time, I will figure out my own style. So that's like the meta answer. There is no one answer. You have to figure it out for yourself. But what you can do is building systems to help you learn. And I think the skills you need as a VC, there are a few of them. One, as you mentioned, building your own deal flow. How do you know about the best companies out there? Second would be, imagine you have access to every deal that's happening in Europe, for example. How do you filter out the most interesting ones? And finally, how do you sell yourself or your fund to win this deal? So these are the 3 skills you would have to learn. On the deal flow business, I think there are multiple ways you can do it. The easiest way, the way you start, is by networking with other VCs. It's very common in the business. that you would share deals with other VCs and they would share back. And you always have this gentleman agreement that, hey, I'm going to share the things I'm excited the most about and expect the same from you, but we're never going to cross each other over.
Yeah, but that does not work.
It does work. That's literally how most of the industry works, on at least on a high level, I would say. Because the moment you break someone's trust, the ecosystem is so small, you'll get punished severely. So it does work to a great extent. The problem of that is, however, you see the deals that everyone is seeing. And then are they the best deals? And if they are the best deals, how expensive would they be? How easy would it be to get? But this is just the way to bootstrap to be even in the game, Now, if you want to be better at the game, you have to build your own. In PayPal, they call it the PayPal mafia, right? Like you have core group of people who might have an advantage on the market, right? And the way to do this is you have to look at yourself and figure out what is your edge. So for example, for me, what I try to do, I'm a competitive programmer, which is different. I'm an Arab. I'm an immigrant who studied something technical, right? And I try to build networks across this. So we have one, the Arabic Diaspora Network, which brings pretty good deal flow. We just made 2 investments through this. I'm building a network here in Munich called Outliers, people under 30 who is a little bit special, a little bit edgy, let's call it. Some of them are building companies, some of them are not yet. Some of them ended up building companies after we've met. So I try to build these networks. So you try to build special networks for you that might give you advantage on the market. There is the Alexandria Hacker House here. We also, as 10x founders, we sponsor this. So you start building access to networks that others will not have. So that's on the deal flow business part. On the analysis part, again, each person has their own style. The thing that you would hear from most investors, that if you're doing early stage, try to focus as much as possible on the founders. And here you can take it into multiple directions. Happy to give you more info, but let me pause here for a second. But yeah.
But would you say that in the pre-seed or seed rounds, would you focus on the founders and ignore the product? Surely you cannot ignore it, but would you say that the founder are the most important piece, especially in this kind of rounds, in the start? So
this is something I'm constantly struggling with, but my reflection during Christmas was the following. You have few examples, some of them here actually out of tomb, like top of mind is Happy Robot, for example. Pablo is an amazing guy. He was building something in computer vision in the beginning. Personally, I was not sure if I believe in it. We did not invest. Later he pivoted. Company is going amazing. I have seen this pattern multiple times right now, that in pre-seed, maybe you think, I do not know if this is the right idea. And it's still a challenge if you say, okay, so I will not invest or not. But I've seen it multiple times. People pivot massively. And if they have the right people, they always find a way and things seem to work well. So I will try to index more in the new year, or 2025 already started, on founders and pre-seed and seed.
But what about students that are just fresh out of university? They just got their bachelor or their master, and they just want to found now. They don't have industry insights. They don't have this competition edge where they worked for 10 years or 15 years in an industry, so they have the insights. Do they have a chance to raise capital? Do they have even a chance to succeed? Especially that, let's be honest, startup industry is a failing industry because 70-80%, even if it's, I think it's even more, most of the startups fail.
Yeah.
So with no kind of knowledge, they don't know the game.
Yeah.
Do they have a chance?
100%. And there is more historical examples than I would have to mention. But I would say there are a few things you can do to stack the odds in your favor. One, I think each person has something special about them. Even if you just graduated, if you look deeper, and hopefully you can cover this in how to raise money later, if you look deeper in about yourself, there is always something special about you. It could be something that you have done before, something you have achieved before. It doesn't have to be 10 years advantage at work. But if you can convey to the investors that there's something special there, no one would care about your age or industry expertise. And there's so many examples of people like this. So that's one way to think of it.
Can you give an example? Like, what's this thing that I can show you as an entrepreneur, as a fresh student, so you as an investor would believe in me?
Yeah. For me, it will always be signs of overcoming adversity and learning fast. And this could be so many things. It could be that you went hitchhiking across countries when you were very young. It could be that you were doing sports competitively. It could be that, I don't know, you grew up in a completely different... Like, here's the thing, what I love. You look at someone, you hear their personal story, how they grew up, and you could never guess that they would end up sitting in front of you, pitching a company right now, raising money. So signs of overcoming adversity, I would say, is one of the main things I would be looking for. And anyone can have that. If they had the right life, I would say.
This is from an investor point of view,
Yeah.
but I'm also thinking about a founder perspective.
Yeah.
Should I look for someone like that when I want to co-found with someone? Or what's the thing? Or basically, how can I build the best team
Yeah.
to kind of have successful founders around me, like that I can build something with them? What's the hidden equation for a successful team?
The first thing that comes to mind is what the founders of Airbnb said, that you try to find people who are so good that it almost scares you. Like, oh my God, that person is amazing. Am I good enough for them? They're amazing. What is this? And you need people who are competent. You need people whose values are aligned with you, because if it's two different values, it will be very hard to work together for 10 years. And I would definitely look for people who actually overcame adversity before, because when things are easy, everyone is a superstar. When things get hard, who will push through with you? And I think these are things you can tell by people's background, people's stories. So I'll definitely index for that.
But why being an entrepreneur from the beginning?
Yeah.
Why getting to be a founder from the beginning? You could go and work for consulting or anything else, still make good money, go the normal way. You're going to have your weekend, work 70, 40, 50 hours a week, have your own time for a weekend. As an entrepreneur, work-life balance might not exist.
Yeah.
And most of the time does not even exist.
Yeah.
You will be raising, you will be fighting with anxiety, with stress, with delivering your product, making the culture. Why would you do it? Why people wants to be entrepreneurs from the beginning?
I have a few controversial takes here. One, I believe in the current age, entrepreneurship is risk-free. People are really, they love saying, oh my God, the risk, the risk, the risk. I will explain why. It's not that risky, one. Second, when you mention consultants and taking a safe job, do you want to die as a consultant? If you're going to die tomorrow, would you want that to be the last thing you do before you die? Most probably not. Most people would say no. Since you do not know when you will die, then don't do it. And third, so I will take it on different levels. One, why do something on your own? I think we as humans, we have this innate need to create stuff. So please try to fulfill it. It will be good. Do not do it just for the sake of doing it. Like, do something you actually enjoy doing. I mean, if you just want to be an entrepreneur because all of your classmates at CDTM or Manager More are entrepreneurs, not nice. If you do it because there is something you enjoy doing, please do it. Don't worry too much. And if you do that, you gain few things. One, there is basically unlimited upside financially. Second, you're doing something you enjoy every day. It gives you a lot of energy. Your life is better. Third, if you look at company building in the following way, I find something that's very unfair, and you have to decide what you want to be. If you work at a company, you are not making the decisions, but you're getting the full burden of the decisions. Meaning, if the management make bad decisions, you will be fired to increase the runway, though you did nothing wrong. Or you can build your own thing and have control of your own destiny, as they say, more or less. So that's one thing. The final part that I would mention is people are always saying, okay, what about the risk? What about the risk? What are you going to lose? And there are multiple studies. Even if you build a company and you fail, the advantage in your career are much higher than if you had worked. So imagine this, you build the company for 3 years, the company fails eventually, but you've achieved maybe anything. The company fails. Then you go to the job market, you will have a much better chance of getting a higher paying job, a better job, than if you had stayed in your career and tried to move step by step by step by step. Now, with that being said, everything is nuanced. This was just like a controversial statement to make a point, but everything is nuanced. For example, what we discussed, if you need first to get your blue card or get your citizenship first, take a second, get this first before you put yourself into an actual risk of getting, leaving the country or having your life destroyed. If you have like a family member you need to take care of, do not do it. Wait a little bit, just like figure a way out of this. Try to find a risk-free way to do it. There are many examples on Twitter of people like, not even Twitter, an example. The guy who created ChatPDF, I was actually spending time with him a few months ago in a hacker weekend, and I got to hear his story. He was working in a company, started ChatPDF on the side. Once it reached 10K, he was like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to do this full time. So there are multiple ways to pay yourself. Do not risk everything and still get paid. And if you're a German citizen or a European citizen in general, your worst case scenario is not that bad. You're not going to die out of hunger. You're not going to be homeless.
Going back to the unfair advantage. So what about the others? What about the internationals who are in Europe, Arabs? What about them? Could they start a company here in Europe? Because I know it myself that regulations are not straightforward. Do you have any idea how I, for example, can start a company now?
Yeah. It's hard. I will not lie to you. For example, you cannot be a managing director of your own company.
What do you mean a managing director? You cannot be the CEO?
You cannot be Geschäftsführer in German.
But you can be a CTO or...
For example, yeah.
You cannot be the CEO?
Yeah, you cannot be, or like maybe CEO on paper, but you're not Geschäftsführer, so whatever you can make with that. And there are like definitely regulation with your visa, etc.
But you need another different visa.
You would, that's also a thing, exactly. So you need to find a co-founder who's European, who can be Geschäftsführer. You will need different visa. Life is different.
But would you be able to own equity in your own company?
Yeah, you can own equity. Obviously, you can own equity. But it's difficult and scary because you do not know what's going to happen if the company fails. So there are people who have done it, and I have huge admiration for them. Personally, for me, I felt it was too risky. My advice would be wait. I mean, now the citizenship laws are becoming much easier. You can maybe work for a year or two, get the citizenship, then you can do whatever you want, and life is like, your risk is minimized. Or maybe if you inform yourself better and figure a way to do it without betting the barn, as they say. But for me, given the information I had, I was like, you know what, let's wait a little bit.
So, but working for 2 years or 3 years and getting that paycheck, would it make it harder for you to say, hey, I'm going to go back to be broke. I'm going to go back to kind of this 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
Because you could get used to this comfort zone where you get paid well, kind of, and you have been working 3 years, 2 years or whatever, so you could go also get the next senior position or something like that. Does it make sense then to break free out of this rut and go back and start your own thing? Yeah.
So I understand the argument logically, but anecdotally, I have few friends who all ended up much happier after either they lost their job or they quit. Why? Because after you have worked for maybe 2 or 3 years, you already have saved enough money that you do not feel this existential threat. Again, if you're a European citizen, your worst case scenario is not that bad. There is so many social security net here that you will not die. So it's not that bad for you. And third, looking at the upside, you would have built some connections, expertise that could help you in founding something. So I get the argument that, do I want to lose this cash that I'm getting? Consider yourself laid off. Move on. You have already enough cash to protect yourself. And if you are still young, again, your downside is almost minimal. And from experience I've seen from my friends, they were very happy.
Let's say now I'm a founder. I start founding. What are the tips and tricks you could give me so I could maximize my success rate?
Yeah. So I have to figure it out myself as well. I cannot give you the answers. So the best I can do is the things I've learned from people at 10x Founders who have built companies before and exited them, or things I have read. So how would you maximize your likelihood? First thing is obviously the founding team. So try to work with people who you think are competent, you think you can build something together with, you think you would stick together no matter what. So that would be the first meta thing. Second, work on something you actually enjoy. If you're working on something that you do not enjoy, if you're not solving your own problem, why? There are much better people to solve it. Third, be stubborn enough, but not too stubborn, I would say. Always try to reflect on the data, what the market is telling you, and pivot accordingly. There is no shame in that if you need to. I really like the book, The $1 Million Weekend, which gives you a few ideas how can you test ideas rapidly, quickly, without like burning yourself through code first. So this would be the top of mind thing. And finally, the thing that I think also maybe a little bit unhealthy in our culture, but we need to remember, not every company has to be a unicorn, right? Like once you're starting out, maybe your first business, second business, most likely, it will be a success for you, but not for a VC, which is fine. You can start a company, try to bootstrap it, learn, make all of your mistakes, generate enough cash flow so you can live a little bit comfortably. And then maybe your third company will be the unicorn. So do not put always this pressure on yourself. If it's not going to be a unicorn, I'm going to stop, I'm going to do nothing. Much smaller amount of money is life-changing for an individual. And it doesn't have to be the Facebook story. You leave university, start a website, and then you become a billionaire.
But does it, going back to the founding team, does it make sense from the start to found with friends, close friends, where the lines can get blurred from friendship to co-founders to maybe even employees?
Yeah.
What's the equation to really find a good co-founder? And I can tell you why, because me, Alice, Lois, the three of us are part of communities of entrepreneurs, which most of the people are competent, which is most of them are really good at what they're doing. And it's always hard to choose with whom you could co-found, because for me now, I would love to co-found with all of them in a different kind of projects, but how can I choose the right one for me?
Yeah. It's funny, I was asking a friend of mine recently the same question because he's going through this journey and I wanted to learn from him. And he was doing it very systematically. So what he would do is he would work with like he finds people who complement him. They would do like, casual dating for a bit. They would work together for a week each. They live together maybe and just like working the whole time together. Do it multiple times. And finally, they figure out the person they want to co-found with. I found too systematic, but interesting. So that's one approach I've heard and seems to have worked with other people.
So you take the person you want to co-found with.
Yeah.
Kind of date them in the sense that you live not even
you can live together, you have co-founding space together, like co-working space together, but just for the full day you're working together and do it for a week too.
On a random project.
It's a project that at least a space you're excited by. For example, this friend, he likes climate tech. Okay, let's ideate and let's execute maybe for a few weeks. Okay, I have a feeling, can we co-found together or not? I do not know. If not, let's try with someone else. And you do this enough times till you figure out, okay, who is the person you can co-found with. So this is like the most systematic approach I've heard. Seems to work good.
But then it's still no math or physics. It's not a correct science. It's a gut feeling.
Exactly. It always will be a gut feeling. Personally, I think my approach would be try to surround yourself with smart people in your life in general. Some of them you'll get along with and feel like that's a person I would like to build something with. And hopefully the magic will happen. It's like dating. Do you want to do it scientifically or algorithmically on Tinder? Or do you just want to open yourself up for chance? It's up to you, but definitely it will always be gut feeling based. Personally, I see no problem with co-founding with friends. I think it even makes it stronger than having this pure business relationship with a person you will spend so much time with.
Okay, we took the founding team now. We go to the next level.
Yeah.
The idea or the space. How do you choose an idea? How do you find a problem that you could solve? Do you start from the market or something that you personally lived or experienced, or how? How exactly is the best way to find a startup idea?
Yeah. So again, I have to caveat with this. I do not know. I can give you my thoughts, and again, time will tell. So there are two ways, maybe three ways. One, exactly as you mentioned in the beginning, you observe the problems you have around you, you observe the problem people have, and try to solve them if you care about them. That's one approach. Second approach, I see a lot now, and people are making good money with it. You go on the App Store, there are some tools that tell you how much money each app is making. You see an app that's like maybe a little bit outdated, but still making a lot of money, then you make it better. Copy, paste, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's also an approach, which is very valid, just to teach yourself how to do it. Third, it could be that, as you mentioned as well, you start with a market that excites you. You start talking to people in the market, maybe shadow them. How do they work? Try to figure out what problems do they have and try to solve it step by step. You can also take the approach of maybe reading interesting, like I heard this multiple times. You read interesting research papers, figure out who's working on them in problems that you care about, and start talking to these researchers and see if there is like a commercialization potential, if you can co-found with them. I heard this story multiple times. And finally, I think Paul Graham mentioned that in one of his articles, that you should put yourself in a position that you're living at the edge of technology, so you can sort of see how the future would look like. And if you're just like building stuff constantly, maybe it's side projects, side hustles, whatever, you learn so much. So you're always at the edge of technology. And on the other hand, you keep in your brain a repository of problems you observe. Like, for example, I love Obsidian. Whenever I meet an interesting problem, could be from a founder that's pitching me or someone or a friend, I connect the interesting problems. When I come across an interesting tech, I keep taking notes, interesting technologies. And then you hope at some point, actually, yeah, if you combine this with this, it could be great. I would enjoy doing that. So these are the 4 ways that I could think of top of mind. I'm sure there are much more suited people to tell you about this, but these would be the thoughts I would have.
Okay, we have the founding team.
Yeah.
We have the idea. Let's say with the idea, the team is good, they develop the product.
Yeah.
How can we raise capital? Do we even need capital?
Exactly.
At any point, which the point we think about, it's now time to kind of raise capital.
Yeah.
And how to approach VCs, how to kind of go even to the game from the start.
Yeah. Let's think about it step by step. So my point of view is you should not raise capital unless you absolutely have to. Why? Think about it, financial upside. A very small exit, if you are bootstrapped, is life-changing for you. A small exit with a VC, not much. Now with AI, I'm extremely surprised by how efficient you can be. And you can build a lot without needing to raise a single cent. If you're building software, at least. If you're building hardware, then you might need to raise capital early on. So what I would do is, I have the team, as you mentioned, I have the idea. I will try to validate the idea. There are very cheap ways to validate the idea, just like do the mom test, talk to customers, try to validate, see if people are willing to pay you money for you to go and solve the problem. So there are so many ways you can do very cheaply to try to validate your idea, that there is even demand there.
How? How do you validate your idea?
So for example, what you could do is you can start talking to people who would be your potential customers, understanding their pains, their problems. And at the end of the call, you can tell them, hey, would you be willing to pay me $5, $10 so I can go and fix it for you?
What if they say yes, but at the end of the day, they would
Make
not?
them pay. Make them pay. Okay, pay me $5. Here's my PayPal. Send me $5. Send me $10, just like as a proof, and I will go and fix this for you. And if I don't fix it, I'll give you back the money.
Okay.
So I mean, just like one thought. So that's one way you can do it. The other way, you can build mock-ups and show it to people and see how people click and do they like it or not. Right now, for example, with V0, you can actually have an actual code. You can deploy it or Replit, for example.
What's V0?
V0, it's a tool from Vercel. You can build like complete front ends, very beautiful, with no code whatsoever. You have Replit, it's amazing. You can deploy it as well. You have Lovable, another amazing tool. You can build a lot really just by prompting. It works out of the gate. You can even have Stripe integration, everything, and just give it to people and see, is anyone willing to pay? Is anyone willing to do anything with it? So my approach would be, do not raise money in the beginning. There are so many cheap ways to validate your idea. There are even interesting, easy to get grants like AI plus Munich, etc., which are like low hassle, I would say. I would delay the fundraising as much as I can, because the more time you have to iterate on your own, the better it is for you. You can negotiate better terms. Now, let's say you decide you actually want to raise.
But when do you decide?
Exactly.
That's also the point, because you can bootstrap if you're a small team. You can live in a small office because you can do that. But at some point you need employees. You need to grow, and then that's costs. That's costs on top of costs of office, whatever. Maybe you cannot cover that through your revenue, and you need to kind of raise.
Absolutely.
So when is it the right moment that you say, hey, it's time to delegate work and have more employees, and then by that I mean raising capital?
Yeah, I think again, there's no one right answer. It depends. For example, if you're doing something deep tech, you obviously will have to raise money very, very early on. For a typical software business, my feeling would be, and maybe just to be very precise here, you can raise without anything. You can actually raise with just an idea and a story, and I can cover that in a second. And I can tell you how to do it. But my recommendation would be, you can validate the idea. If you start feeling there are people who are willing to pay, you can go and raise and start hiring people and grow like crazy. That would be my recommendation. Just like validate the idea enough and then go raise money. But if you want to...
We talk about seed, so or pre-seed.
You can do that in pre-seed as well.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, you still, and I see it a lot, you can also raise a lot of money or like raise enough money without even doing that. But my preferred option is, if you come to me, and again, I'm here negotiating against myself, more or less. If you come to me like, hey, I have X amount of people who are willing to pay for this, even pay. You don't even have a product. Just imagine that. Or I have a prototype and people are using it. You will get better terms anyways. So if you can afford to do it, I would do it. Let's say you cannot afford to do it, which is absolutely fine. Then, in this case, what you are pitching, and this will get us back to the point you mentioned in the beginning, is your story. Why should anyone give you money right now? And we can cover that.
Let's cover it.
Cool. So I would say, let's say you're raising a pre-seed round. Let's take the worst case scenario. You're fresh grads. You have no industry experience. You're raising a pre-seed round. You don't even have a product.
But you have a problem.
But you have I hope. I hope that. I hope that. You at least have a problem. Identify the problem. You think it makes sense. Maybe you validated it somehow with phone calls or whatever, customer interviews. Maybe you didn't even have to do that. But anyways. And now you want to raise money. What do? As everything in life, I think it's a game. And in this game, I think of it as multiple stages. The first stage is, how do you get the VCs to take you seriously in the beginning? Just to be completely honest, because why would they? Now,
one step before,
yeah,
how do you get even to the VC?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Not even to take you seriously.
Yeah.
How can I get the chance to meet Omar even like?
Exactly. And this is the first challenge. The first challenge, is you meet someone like Omar or someone who works in the industry on the junior level, get them to take a call with you and be excited about you. That's the first, that's the first mini boss you have to face.
But how?
Never come. Exactly. I will cover that in a second. The wrong way is you just send them a random email or LinkedIn message because everyone does that. No one will read it, unfortunately, unless you're extremely good in cold emailing. But again, the chance is 99% no one would read that. So you should not do this. My recommendation is you play the game as following. Or maybe first I let you walk a mile in my shoes so you understand why I'm saying the things I would say. So my day is, I open on my calendar, I have 10 calls. Every day is maybe I have between 5 to 10 calls. Half hours with founders. The end of the week, I have to pick 2 or 3 that are very interesting. So I will invite them for a second call the week after. I will pitch it to my team, try to get people excited about them. So imagine the overwhelm I'm feeling every single day. That's why, even if I want to, I cannot afford to reply to every message, every email, every whisper I hear that someone is funding something. I cannot go after it because I simply don't have the time. I'm already overwhelmed. Now imagine a different approach. A portfolio founder I invested in, or someone I trust tells me, hey, Omar, talk to Sahbi. He's one of the smartest people I know and he knows the industry inside out. Or he's one of the smartest people I know and I think he's onto something. Think how I would feel. I would drop everything and talk to you. Now, okay, how do you do this? Again, if you want the systematic way, I would say the following. Think which VCs you want to raise from. So people who backed companies that are exciting in your space. Make a list of that.
How do you find them? You just go around?
It's very easy. You can go on Crunchbase, look at the companies you admire in your space, who invested in them early on. The easiest way. You can read the TechCrunch articles. You're part of Manager More. You can even ask people around. But I would start, assuming you don't know anyone, go on Crunchbase, find the companies you like. Who did they raise from? Make a list of that. Good? Then go on their websites, figure out early stage companies, preferably in a space somehow similar to yours that they invested in. Great. You can start reaching out to the founders of these companies. You can say something like, hey, I really admire the work you're doing. I'm thinking about building something in similar space. I would like to pick your brains on a few things. Some of them would say yes and take the call. Amazing. Get to know them. Over time, try to be helpful to them, useful. If you read something interesting, send it over to them. If you talk to a customer that could be relevant for them, make an intro. Just build a relationship with them. Now, once you're ready to raise, let's say you do this 3 months, 6 months before you plan to raise, then you have the simplest move. Just ask them, hey, I'm planning to raise right now. can you introduce me to your current investors? And then immediately you are on the table, very highly prioritized of all the investors that you liked. So that is like a very systematic move you can do. I will pause if you have any questions.
Wow. I'm trying to kind of to put myself in the shoes of that person. It's too much work and too much time invested only to develop the network.
Yeah.
Which I can take that time and invest it in my own startup, in my own product, which at least from my perspective at the moment makes more sense.
Yeah.
That you go and build something that people will buy, that people will invest in, rather than go and do the networking.
Yeah.
Send them anything I find and keep this kind of system where I'm artificially making them my friends and make them like me more.
Yeah.
Why not just invest more time in my product and in my culture and my own venture rather than working on like developing a new friendship?
Fair enough. Let's take it on multiple layers. First layer, if you're the CTO, you should not be doing what I just said. You have a team, you have people who are building, because for example, when you are fundraising as a CEO of the company, you will not be focusing on the product. You will be spending all of your time talking to VCs, answering their questions, pitching in different meetings. It's unfortunately very time intensive. So you as a team, you should be ready that when the CEO, for example, who is usually doing the fundraising is not there, the team can still function. And that's why having a founding team is important. So that's layer number one. And given how time intensive fundraising...
Can I ask a question about this? Because, but how would you develop a team that in case one of the co-founders, one of the main components is away? Fundraising is not particularly at that time... cannot directly impact the product and the sales and the marketing and anything related to that. How could you develop such a culture? How could you develop such a infrastructure, systems that helps in case someone is out for a while, the system can also continue? Or is there any part where you would say, without this person, without this position, everything stops? How could you do that?
Yeah, but imagine if this is the case, it's a very bad company, right? If someone is out, then the whole company collapses. That's a very bad company. Now, if you think about it, even when someone is out, it's not that they are completely out, that you can never talk to them. You can still have structures in place. Like, for example, once per day, we have like an alignment call, for example. Or we have a structure where, I don't know, the CTO is managing the engineers, and we have a structure of how would we communicate then, how would we make decisions, especially in these cases. So you don't have to take it to the extreme that you are absolutely not available, your co-founder sending you messages and like, I'm busy. You can still have structures where you align, but you have full trust that even with you not being fully present, the company is still running the things you need to do. You can maybe helping and giving the direction, but the execution, you do not have to be as involved with it during this fundraising time. And unfortunately, it will always be this way for fundraising. Now, the question is, if this is the case, would the some time, and we're speaking about half-hour calls and then sending a message every now and then, that you spend in nurturing these business relationships with potential founders that could later, when the fundraising happens, save you a huge amount of time. Is it worth it or not? And we have seen this in our portfolio. There is a company that raised from some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley, out of Germany, who did exactly that. Their fundraising, we did the pre-seed. Very rapidly, they raised the seed. Very rapidly, they raised the Series A because they had this amazing network of founders who were recommending them to the best people. So if you think about it, doing this exercise will save you so much time later on that it will definitely be worth it. And if you take it a layer deeper, these half-hour calls, these chats, they are not taking 5 days per week. You still can work. But you have to put the groundwork, the legwork first. So when you actually fundraise, your chances are much better.
Okay. So you need to fundraise fast.
Yeah, 100%. And this, we'll get it in step number 2.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's very important that young founders do not know about it. If your fundraising is slow, it will not going to happen.
What does it mean, slow or fast?
Okay. So obviously, it's always relative. But if in the first, let's say, 4 weeks, you're not having term sheets, you will get in a very bad cycle, which is the following.
Wait, can you explain what's term sheet for
Yeah, sure.
everyone who does not know what's
Sure.
a term sheet?
Term sheet is basically when an investor wants to invest in your company, they give you what is called a term sheet. It's literally a sheet which highlights the main terms they want to invest in. So the main ideas, not everything in details, the main ideas, I will invest this amount of money in this kind of round at this valuation. Here are the terms. And you as a founder, usually when you're fundraising, you talk first to lead investors. Some of them will give you term sheets. You have to choose one of them, and then you structure the round. So let's say 4 weeks into your fundraising, you do not have this. What will happen? As I mentioned earlier, if you're on the VC side, you build your network by talking to other VCs, and everyone talks to each one. What will happen is multiple people will know that you have been, quote unquote, on the market for too long, which means so many people have seen you and they decided to pass or not engage further. Which means, and if you remember, every day I'm overwhelmed. So I hear Sahbi is raising. Okay, good. Sahbi has been raising for 4-6 weeks. Okay, let me focus on something else. So that's why, exactly, when you fundraise, it should be fast to avoid getting unfortunate into this cycle.
But how can you avoid it? How can you go fast? How can you...
Exactly. And this is the 2 layers of the game. So the first layer is you build the groundwork. So when you decide to fundraise, you are very quickly in front of the desk of the best VCs that you decided are the best VCs for you, right? So you already jumped ahead. So in the first week, you're talking to all the VCs you want. Amazing. Good. Now, you know, the moment you talk to these VCs, they will tell you their friends and their friends and their friends. Everyone will be like, who the hell is this guy who's talking to everyone right now and everyone's excited about him? Step number 1.
So you create the FOMO effect.
Exactly. You must. Now, as I mentioned, layer number 1 is getting in front of people like me. Someone who has between 0 and 5 years of experience. And again, you have to understand our incentive. So level number 1 was, get us to schedule a call with you. Now, put yourself in my shoes to understand what are my motivations, what are my incentives, and know how to play the game. Now, I have, 20, 30 calls per week. I do not know how many. I cannot remember all of them. And every call I join, I have the same gut feeling in the beginning, which is, please God, please God, please God, make it an amazing call. Because if it's not, that's 30 minutes of my lifetime. I will never get back. I could have invested somewhere else. And it's literally a heartbreak. Every time you go on a call and you know it's not a fit, you're like, why did I take a call? I could have canceled, etc. So I'm joining the call. I'm already rooting for you. Okay. Now understand my incentive. My incentive is I want your call to be an amazing call. Why? Because then I can go back to my team, like a baby cub in a lion pride. Hey, look what I have found. Amazing, 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 amazing. We should take this one seriously.
Okay, how can I make an amazing call?
Exactly. Let's get to this. So now you have gotten to my desk. Your task is to get me so excited that I fight for you. I become your internal champion, as they call it in VC lingo, inside the fund. So you get the investment, right? Now, how do you do this? Again, everything has steps. Usually when you meet a VC, the conversation goes like this. People tell you, hey, let's have a short round of introductions first. It's never short, and it should not be short. A mistake I see a lot of young founders do, I'm not important, the company is important. They skip their introduction, which is a killer.
What's an introduction one more time?
Exactly. Introduction is simply I tell you why me and my fund are the coolest thing ever, and I expect you to do the same. So I'm like, hey, I'm Omar, I did this, I did this, I did this, I work at 10X Founders, 10X Founders does X, Y, Z. What about you? Now, this is your chance to pitch me your team. If you go rapidly, I'm Sahabi, I'm from Tunisia, I'm building this company, and you go into the company, already minus 10,000 points. Why? Because think about it. When I'm pitching you, in early stage at least, I'm pitching you. I'm not pitching the company. I'm pitching the people building the company. If you do not give me enough material about you and your co-founders, I wouldn't care.
How does a student, fresh grad, can pitch you
Amazing.
himself? Use me as an example.
Perfect. So first of all, just to help you overcome this feeling that you're having of, imagine someone who spent 20 years in Google coming and pitching me. Do you think their pitch would be much better? It doesn't have to be. Because they would say, I spent 20 years at Google, I worked at this department, that department, that department, that department. This is not a good story.
Okay.
So don't worry about that, first of all. Let's say you're a fresh grad, right? Now, what I would recommend before you start talking to VCs, sit down with yourself, and write down what do you consider are the most impressive / interesting things you have done. And again, this could be very random. For example, a founder we invested in, also fresh grad, he told me the story of how he was always obsessed by 3D printing. And once he had a colleague who lost her arm, and he 3D printed a prosthetic arm for her at the lab of the university. One story. Another one, someone who hitchhiked when they were very young, at 14, 15 years old, around different countries. Nothing to do with founding. Interesting. Someone who was, I don't know, playing sports in a very competitive level. Someone who, I don't know, was kidnapped once and survived it. Someone who was, there's always like really crazy stories, right? But here's the thing. This way of talking, it's not normal, right? You never meet someone for the first time like, hey, I hitchhiked and did this and this, or I did this and that, right? So you have to learn it. So you have to sit down, and I'm 100% certain every person has something exciting about them. For example, it could be the things you had to go through just moving from Tunisia to here. I do not know, how did you find your first VG? How did you find your first apartment? How did you get your first meeting with the Ausländer Behörde? How did you overcome all of this?
That was a wild story.
I know, right? I mean, and many times you game the system to actually get where you are, right? How did you learn German and then study in German, for example? How was that? Like, figure out what are the most impressive stories about you. Now, you would sit down and create a narrative. And again, I know it's so uncomfortable for many people because they feel they are bragging. You're not bragging. It's part of the game. People are actually rooting for you. They want to know the most exciting things about you. It could be, again, some people start very early on. Hey, no one in my family is an entrepreneur. We grew up not knowing where our next paycheck will get. That made me, I don't know, start like a lemon stand when I was 6 years old to pay whatever. Or I just did it because I wanted to make money. There's so many things you can tell me about how you grew up, why you're building this company. How do you think your life led you to decide on this company? When did you compete for something? And when? When did you lose? What did you learn from that? So I would figure out these things and I create a narrative which combines how I grew up to the company I'm building and dropping in the middle this exciting stuff. Why? Because these are the things that the investor would remember and pitch internally. And you do this for you and for your co-founders. So I would start the meeting with this. You play the game, hey, let's have a short round of introductions. You know it's not going to be short. You take your time. I tell founders sometimes, hey, if you don't speak about your company this call, I'm absolutely fine. I would love to learn more about you. And I spend so much time asking founders about how did they grow up, did they have siblings, what did they do, etc., etc., etc. Which is absolutely fine because this is what I need. So that's step number 1 in the call.
Okay.
Should I move on?
Yeah.
Awesome. So you have the step number 1. And again, as Hitchcock said, you start with an earthquake and then you go up from there. So you start with like, oh my God, crazy story. I'm excited. I need to listen to this guy. This could be a company I invest in. So you finish this part. Now you're talking about the company, right? And again, think about what is the most exciting thing about your company. And for different people, it's different. For example, if you had already validated your idea and you have few paying customers, you can have like, a beautiful statement or beautiful slide. Hey, in 3 weeks, we achieved, I don't know, 2K MRR, anything, Okay, who are these guys? What did they do, for example? Or the most exciting thing about your company could be you now have, I don't know, there is a big problem, for example, that can only be solved now. And then you highlight this. So try to figure out, first of all, what is the most exciting thing about your company? Now, here's my advice to you. When you're pitching your company, always assume that the person in front of you know nothing about your market, about your product, about your technology. Use ChatGPT and say, explain it like I'm 5. And your pitch should be as simple as possible, in as few words as possible, and you can always make pauses and make sure that the person understood. So let's say, in this workflow, you pitch yourself, you're like, okay, so here's the problem that bothered me a lot, and you explain it. Imagine you are X, that's your customer, you want to achieve Y, and you cannot achieve it because of Z. Do you understand why this is painful, why this is costing money? Then the VC will try to, usually what I like to do, I try to repitch the idea always to the founders. Okay, is it because of this and this and this? And this is an opportunity to explain to them why, for example, the problem is significant. Okay, here's how we solve it. There is an app, you enter this, you get this as an output. You don't need to go into details. Do you understand how it works? Do you mean this and this and that? You start having a conversation. Now that you understood it, look at the competition. All of them have this strong insight of doing so and so and so. We're doing it in this way. Do you understand this? Good. Now, you would ask me, which is a typical VC question, how do you build defensibility? How do you build moat? Why can't someone copy it later on? And always the answer is, in the beginning, there is no moat. If we can do it, other people can do it. However, if we are lucky and successful and execute well enough, and we do not have a killing competition in the first 1 year, we will have X, Y, Z. We can cover also the different types of moats, X, Y, Z, and this will make us in a very strong position. You finished your story. My ask is, I'm raising X, Y, Z. There's a company, I will never forget it. It was called Etched. It was a very young guy, out of fresh school, building a company that take on NVIDIA. I remember the pitch I had with him. It took 15 minutes. He pitched me the whole thing. It was very simple. I asked him, okay, why would you be better than NVIDIA? I'm taking a crazy bet of like burning the architecture of an LLM on a chip. If large language models remain transformer based, I win. If not, I lose. It's a very complicated topic, but it was the very simplest pitch I ever heard. The guy's doing amazing right now. So what I'm saying is, I know it's hard, but you take this messy story of your idea and market and problem, break it down into very simple statements. My preferred pitch deck is 1 slide, 1 sentence. You move on. I follow. I'm always excited. Everything is clear. I know what you're solving and why you're different. One other recommendation that I would recommend in the first call, before you go on the first call, sit down with yourself and prepare a Notion or Excel, whatever, 3 columns. The most common question you expect people to ask you about your startup, a 1-sentence answer. Then the last column, maybe a 3-sentence explanation of the 1-sentence answer. If a VC asks you a question, you give them the 1-sentence answer and pause. If they want to elaboration, they will ask you. If they not, they move to the second question. This shows them that you thought hard enough about a lot of things such that you can give this very concise 1-sentence answers. And I think if you do this, you're already in the top 1% of founders, and it will be very easy to move to the third step, where then the person becomes your internal champion and try to fight for you inside the fund to hopefully get the investment.
I really loved it. Everything is clear from the start to raising. Let's not get to the exit because that's a whole episode on itself, but I would love now to go through your own entrepreneurial journey. You're a VC investor in the day, founder entrepreneur at night and the weekends. How does it look like? How does a normal day look like? And what's the thing you're building at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So my day, I mean, it's very hard. I enjoy it, but it's very hard to describe because as a VC, it's not that you have a 9-to-5 job and then after the 5 o'clock, I can completely switch off. But luckily, I feel everything I'm doing connects together somehow, that I do not know where something ends and something starts. So for me, usually I have my calls scheduled during the day with founders, with other VCs. Then afterwards, I'm doing my research. Every day is different. Some days I'm staying late because I have VC calls or startup calls in the US. Sometimes I'm doing research in the evening, sometimes not. So I think it's a very flexible, working structure, which I'm very grateful for 10x Founders for. So you have my VC work, which takes a huge part of my life. Then for me, how I think about it is, and what I'm building, I forgot to mention that, which helps. It's a tool that optimizes the workflow of VCs. So I'm literally using my tool every day when I'm working, which helps me figure out the bugs, what I can do better, what I would need. I have people who are using it who are also other VCs. And when I'm talking with them, they're like, actually, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? I tried it and I had this problem. So everything feeds into one another, I would say. So my day is, by day, the official working hours, I would say, I'm doing the VC work. Afterwards, I'm sometimes doing my research. And then at the night or the weekends, I spend the time coding mainly or thinking about what is to be built next. So that's the general setup, I would say.
But we talked about it today already, about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Is it a reality that does not exist for entrepreneurs?
I don't know, but like the sacrifice that I was very conscious about doing, that unfortunately my social life will take a big hit, and it did. I have to accept that. Unfortunately, there is very limited amount of hours every day. So for me, my thought process is there's still very people who are very close to my heart. I try to meet them every now and then, keep the relationships, but my social life took a big hit, which I think is okay. I'm doing something I love. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I know that it will eventually pay off. So unfortunately, you have to
How do you
give
know?
up something. How do I know? Because let's think about the scenarios, right? Scenario number one, the best case scenario, I become much better at my job as a VC because I get through the pain of what founders go through. I get to meet very interesting people along the way. And my tool also works, make me some money, everyone is happy. That's the best case scenario. Let's take the worst case scenario. The tool does not go anywhere. No one uses it. Well, I still use it. I'm much more productive at my work. I have learned a ton of tools and ton of, technologies that I'm using that will always benefit me in my work. I have built something that people used. I got their feedback. I established myself more or less. And if this idea didn't work, I'm already a much better person, a much better position. That once maybe I'm talking to more technical founders, I know what they're going through. I know what they are thinking of. I can even help them. I can even be useful. So when I thought about it, I was like, okay, that's the best case scenario. That's the worst case scenario. What is there to lose? The sacrifice is the social life. I get it. Sacrifice I'm willing to make. Upside, downside is very clear to me. Why not?
And at which point will you say, hey, I'm not going to be an investor anymore. I'm going to now go and work full time on my idea. And by the way, how many people are working already on your idea? Is it only you?
So now we are 3 people. We had 2 interns, but now they are not with us anymore. So it was between 3 and 5, I would say. I don't think I'll ever do that because I feel VC is too addictive. Like when I think about it, financially in the short term, if I had continued in my competitive programming career, just do lead code for a few months, then apply for a job at Google or Microsoft or whatever, it would pay off much more than VC. The reason I'm doing VC is not because of the money or the financial upside, at least not in the short term, but it's really addictive. Like literally, it's like you are getting paid to speak to the smartest people out there who are literally creating the future in real time, and you get to see how the future would look like. So personally, I don't think I would ever stop the investing part. It's just so much fun, so addictive to let it go. My preferred life is that I always find this ikigai, where by day, I'm investing, I'm learning from people, I'm talking to them, I'm excited, I learn about so much problems. And even before I started this thing as a company, I was having so many open source tools. So always in the weekends, I just love to code, build stuff, ship it, and see what sticks. So for me, that would be my ikigai, my perfect state, where by day I do this, by night I'm building. I really would not want to give up any part of this life.
You can always be an angel investor. I mean, you can hit a good exit and then be an angel investor for life.
But when I think, for example, at the founders of 10x Founders, they were all angel investors and eventually decided to start a fund. Why? It's much more fun to do it with other people, right? You have much more resources, you can have a network, you do it with other people, you challenge yourself. I feel angel investing is a very lonely pursuit where you're just like, on your own. So I don't know, for me, I would always love to be part of a fund. I really like the culture and the ecosystem we have at 10x Founders. So if I can, I would love to have this ikigai situation.
But so you wouldn't go full time on your idea?
I think so far I wouldn't. I'm also very open to the fact of, because for example, what I'm working on right now, it's very clear to me, it's not like the life-changing idea. It's not something that I can imagine myself doing for 10 years in the future. But let's say I discover something that I'm so passionate about that I think I can dedicate the next 10 years of my life just doing this. Then yeah, in this sense, I could imagine myself going full-time, building something, and then hopefully I will get back to VC because I just love it.
Interesting. I think we need to wrap it up. At some point, I still have a lot of questions, honestly. But what would it be your advice to any founder, to anyone who's questioning if he or she should found now, what would be your advice for them to either go and found or not to go and found?
As everything in life, it depends on your situation. But I'm a friend of, and there's so many cases you can, and I think Twitter is amazing. Like you see, like the smartest people just talking openly. There's so many cases of you can minimize risks while founding a company. So you do not have to, sell your house and risk not paying your mortgage to found a company. Always ask yourself, what is the smartest next move? And just start with that. So there's no idea, like maybe just one story here that I prefer. The founder of Virgin Megastore, when he wanted to start an airline company, he didn't even know where to start. What should I do with that? So he picked up the phone, called an airline. Hey, do you have any airplanes for leasing? There is no idea that's too complicated. You cannot even take the first step. So if you want to found something, there's something that excites you, I would say, ask yourself, what is the smartest next move? Take it. Each step will take to the other. And at some point, you will figure it out. Either you decide to do it full-time, half-time, not do it. But my general recommendation, always surround yourself with the smartest people you can. Either through Manage More, other organizations, debate clubs, whatever, but always try to surround yourself with the smartest people you can, and this will open as many doors as possible for you.
Omar, thank you very much. It was really inspiring, was really interesting. It was so good to have you on board, and looking forward to see DealDoc AI gonna be the next unicorn, hopefully, and how you're gonna be the next big investor, and hopefully invest in the next OpenAI or whatever that you believe in.
Thank you so much, man. It was really a pleasure being here, and I can't wait for you to found your company, and hopefully we could be the first. Exactly, be the first investors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Spark is proudly presented by Ripple Film, storytelling for tech, B2B, and beyond.